Hello, and welcome to Appleton Engaged. I'm your host, Timber Smith, DEI coordinator for the city of Appleton. And Appleton Engaged is a podcast that explores the many people, organizations, and resources that make our community a great place to live, work, and play. So whether you're a longtime resident or just getting to know Appleton, join us as we learn more about our community together. Hello out there, Appleton Engaged listeners. As you can tell, my partner in crime is missing Andy, but I will try to keep the show afloat. Andy, if you're out there listening, can't wait for you to come back. She's busy today. Well, I'm super excited about today's episode because we've got a resource today that I think everybody's going to know who this resource is, but I get a feeling like there's a lot to learn here. There's lots of things we don't understand, but this is such an important resource within our community that's serving a population of people that I think there's some people who utilize it for fun, and then there's some people who really utilize it for need. Even more the reason why they are such a staple within the community. This week's guest is Jody Kasten, Executive Director of St. Vincent de Paul, Appleton. Hey, Jody.
Hi there.
How are you doing?
Great. Thanks for having me.
All right. Thank you for making time for the Appleton Engaged listeners. Do you mind telling us a little bit about yourself and your association with Appleton and the Fox Cities region?
All right. Well, my husband and I owned and operated a dairy farm in Reedsville, Wisconsin for about 24 years, and we raised our 6 kids on that dairy farm. As I approached the end of my work life on the farm and we ended up selling the farm, I began working outside of the farm. I have a degree in education. I taught for a few years. I had gone to Madison, UW-Madison. I am now working for the Society of St. Vincent de Paul here in Appleton. I started out working for the Society in Green Bay, and now I was the Director of Operations there. I'm now proud to be in Appleton as the Executive Director.
Oh, right. So that's interesting. So farming for 24 years?
Absolutely.
Oh,
yes.
that does not sound easy.
It was not easy. I probably wouldn't go back and do it again, but I wouldn't trade what I experienced for anything.
All right. And that's a pretty good-sized family. 6?
Yeah. 3 girls, 3 boys.
Whoa.
3 left-handed, 3 right-handed. Very balanced, I always say, but once you get beyond that, we're not as balanced. We're just a crazy bunch.
I love it. Okay. Jody, can you please tell us about your resource?
All right. Well, I am very passionate to work for the Society of St. Vincent de Paul. For me, my faith is the foundation of my life, and the Society of St. Vincent de Paul is a Catholic lay organization that serves to grow spiritually themselves in community with one another. But then through that growth is to reach out in the community, share love and friendship with people who are marginalized, in need. We often say that our volunteers serve people who fall through the cracks.
My big question would be, what else does being part of the Society of St. Vincent involve? Because all I've ever known is the store.
Right. That is the most visible part of the organization. So everyone thinks, oh, I know St. Vincent de Paul. It's a thrift store. There actually could be the Society of St. Vincent de Paul exists in many communities across the nation with no thrift stores at all. They are completely supported by the community, offering funds and donations that they then utilize to help those in need. Here in Appleton and in many of the Wisconsin communities, we do have thrift stores as a very visible way to help people. Our Vincentians can give vouchers to the stores, so we can match donated items to people who need them, looking for a second chance, furniture, household items, and clothing. But one of the most important things that our Vincentians, that's our home visit volunteers, will do is to help with rent assistance and utility assistance oftentimes. Rent is one of the biggest requests that we get. And so really homelessness prevention is a focus of the organization. And what I failed to say is that these volunteers are in parish-based groups, and we call them conferences. That's our language. And then the conferences, there's 11 parish-based groups in this community and in Wapaka County. And the 11 parish-based groups come together as a district council. And that's who hires me, and that's how we run thrift stores.
So, because I feel like at least in the major municipalities, there's always a St. Vincent's around, right?
It feels that way, right? Yes.
It does really feel like that, at least around here. I don't know if that's everywhere or if that's statewide, but around here it definitely feels like that. So you all work together is what I'm hearing.
Right. But there's a lot of subsidiarity with the options for how to serve in your community. So it's one of the most beautiful things about the organization. It's also kind of challenging at times because people want to, what they see in one St. Vincent de Paul, they want the next one to do the exact same thing, and it doesn't work like that.
Oh.
Each district council makes decisions about how to serve their community. So if the community is saturated with food pantries, then St. Vincent de Paul doesn't need to run a food pantry. But if there's need for that, then they're going to say, all right, let's run a food pantry.
So decisions are really made locally according to what are the needs of that particular community.
Absolutely, 100%.
Okay. So what have you learned is our greatest needs in our community?
Well, definitely the homelessness prevention and how to address the needs of those who are experiencing homelessness in the community. So that is the primary focus of our Vincentians here. They are also looking at systemic change programs that there are other district councils across the nation. There are actually about 800,000 Vincentians, they're called, the members, throughout this nation. And so other district councils have thought of ways to solve some of the problems they're facing. Systemic change programs like Bridges Out of Poverty and Getting Ahead are already being done in other district councils. And so here in Appleton, they're looking at all of the different options for those systemic change programs to try to help people who are ready to take that next step to figure out why they are finding themselves in a perpetual situation and then helping them through that process.
How do you become hopefully I don't slaughter this. How do you become a Vincentian? Did I get that right?
You did it really well, actually. Okay. Yes, I've heard Venetian and all kinds of things. So you become a Vincentian by, reaching out through we have contact on our website, but really it is a Catholic lay organization, but they are welcoming members that are outside of the Catholic faith to be a part of the home visit process. And the home visit is the core of the organization. So meeting people in their home is very important, but they do it in pairs. And so having more Vincentians would be amazing. Reaching out to the local parish to get connected, and then going through a process of learning what it's about and experiencing it, and then determining, is this where my heart wants to be?
How large is your team of individuals that you have here in this region? And is everybody a volunteer, or are there people who actually you pay as part of the team?
That's a great question. In Appleton and Wapaka County, we have it's right around 100 volunteers, and they are the organization. They're the ones out there serving people. And then they hire the executive director. Then I provide oversight for the thrift store staff, and then we have a mission services / Vincentian resources support person on staff, and then a bookkeeping person. So it's a fairly small staff that's really keeping afloat all of the things that offer support to that group of volunteers out in the community that are carrying out the service.
Okay. And I heard you use the term staff when it came to the people working in this store.
Correct.
Okay.
But we do have volunteers in our store as well. We have a really good core of volunteers that come in regularly. We also have temporary opportunities for people that just want to come in a couple of times or maybe one time or do a small group activity as volunteering. So there are opportunities for that as well.
What is a myth or a misunderstanding that you think people have about St. Vincent's?
Well, it definitely is that St. Vincent de Paul is a thrift store. Thrift store is something we do, but it's not who we are. Who we are is those volunteers out there in the community with a caring heart and wanting to really gain that friendship, hear the story of the person, and then address the need with attention, however that they feel it will best serve that person.
I've always heard, and maybe you can correct this if I'm wrong, but I heard like when people donate like items to St. Vincent's, like that goes really directly back to those in need often.
Yes,
and like there's not like, I don't know what to say would be in the middle, but something in the middle.
Well, I mean, obviously, I'm hired to do a job, right? So I do draw a salary from the organization, so it does help to offset that cost.
Right.
But anything over and above those costs, and having a building, if we can go back to the myths, I think oftentimes people will say about a thrift store, well, you get it all for free. Well, sure, but we're paying people that have to bring in the donations and handle them and price them. And so if I had to say what is a myth about the thrift store specifically, it would be that. They're not recognizing the cost and the cost of not having to put it out in the yard. I mean, we have it in a building that has air conditioning and heating in the winter. So,
oh no, it's got to get out there. And I mean, do you know at all like how many donations you receive annually or anything like that, or is that like an impossible thing to know?
Well, we don't count them. That's so the inventory. This is a very generous community. We are not, we're in a great place with the donations that are being brought to us. And we do have a really good accountability system as far as how many items leave the store that someone purchased. So we know how many items are going out.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, no, that's pretty good.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Is there anything in particular that would be helpful for the community to be donating to the store that you find like that the community needs of the community people snatch up very quickly? Yeah,
furniture is a big item. I mean, a lot of times people are starting out new in an apartment, and our Vincentians will give vouchers to our store to the people that they're meeting with. So having couches in particular, kitchen tables and chairs, living room chairs are all really valuable, and especially the time of the year that it's the most needed is in the winter months right after Christmas until about February or March when people feel more like going out, I think. I can only speculate why we don't get as many donations, but I've seen that to be true across a decade of working for the society.
Okay. Oh, that makes sense. Well, they may have Santa might have been good to them, and like they're deciding to be good to others.
Yes.
All right. Jody, can you please share a story with the Appleton Engaged listeners that'll help them understand more about St. Vincent?
Yeah, I would love to actually share the origin story, which actually started in Paris, France in 1833. And there was a young man by the name of Frederick Ozanam, and he was the one who actually started the organization. He was in a conversation with some other young college mates, and they were talking about all the social issues of their day, which if you picked up what they were talking about and you put it in our setting right now, you'd be like, wow, it feels like where we are. Just a lot of disparity between wealth and poverty, and they were trying to decide, how do you address those needs? And one of the young men challenged Frederick and said, you know, you're always talking about your faith, but what do you actually do about it? And so Frederick took that very seriously and started coordinating his friends, and then they went and they started serving people in the most impoverished areas in France, in Paris. And from there, they realized how great the need was. They realized how much they needed to be continuing this effort. So they formally organized, and then it just took off from there. By 1857, there was what's called a conference in the United States in St. Louis, Missouri. Here in Appleton, we became a part of the society in 1969. So it took a little bit longer to get it here in Appleton, get it started. But really, again, going back to the basic premise is the Vincentians meeting in pairs and meeting people where they're at. Frederick was very passionate about not making people stand in long food lines that were happening at that time in Paris. And so he wanted to go to them. He said, the poor are the masters of their own domain, and they will share more of their story with you if you go to them. So that friendship is a big part of why our folks go to meet with the people in their home whenever possible.
That's powerful.
I find it to be, yes, definitely.
Are there any upcoming initiatives, events, or engagement opportunities?
Well, we have. Right now, we actually were invited to talk about the flood recovery. And so we have one of our Vincentian leaders is taking the initiative to be a part of that flood recovery group. So we are working with that. I mean, we are on the verge of opening a second thrift store. We're expanding our thrift store operation to really be able to increase the sustainable revenue for the organization.
Jody, is there anything the community can do to be helpful?
Absolutely. We definitely rely on donations from the community, not only the donations that come in for the thrift store, but the funds. And there are some wonderful donors out there who, $20 here or $100 there goes a long way. Definitely St. Vincent de Paul needs volunteers who have the heart to serve people in a spirit of friendship. That's number one. We're looking for increasing the small army of people that are out there serving this community. We also are looking for volunteers in our thrift store, so we're happy to always increase the number of volunteers. That helps to offset costs, and we are good at utilizing volunteers. And then there's financial donations. So providing donations is directly going to helping people in need in this community, right here in Appleton. It doesn't go to another community.
I think that's pretty important to know. Mm-hmm. I know earlier, before we started recording, you had mentioned something about, is there the opportunity that y'all are working on a new place?
Yes, we're so excited to expand our thrift store operations. We are already at work on a building at 1175 North West Hill Boulevard. And we are hoping to open our new thrift store, second thrift store. We're not closing the current thrift store. We're just adding another one. And we're hoping to open in the fall of this year. I can't give out a date just yet because it's in a build-out process. And it's, dependent on contractors and permits and things all coming together. So we're hard at work at it and very excited about this.
Who can people contact if they'd like to learn more or become a volunteer or maybe utilize your resource because they have need?
Yes. Everything they need to know or find about contacting someone is available on our website. That is at www.svdpappleton.org. If they go to that website, you can find buttons to click for applying for resources. You can find a button to click for volunteering and signing up to be a volunteer. And there are people to contact if you're interested in, say, becoming a Vincentian and one of our home visit volunteers.
All right, Jody, is there any additional information that you would like to share with the Appleton Engaged listeners that maybe we didn't ask a question about?
I think it's really important to know that the Society of St. Vincent de Paul doesn't have a one-size-fits-all kind of approach to the help that they provide, which is why I say that they're there for the people who otherwise might fall through the cracks. So, for example, there was a gentleman who came to us because he didn't have enough money to pay up front for a health exam that he needed in order to get a job. And our Vincentians met with him, and they felt it was appropriate to pay for that exam because obviously if a person can't get a job, they can't pay for housing. So that, I think, is a really important piece. In fact, sometimes it's helping people to get an ID and paying for that. It's whatever it's going to take, because I think we don't always realize the barriers that are in front of people who are in need. And we think, well, why don't they just pull themselves up by their bootstraps and go out there and get it done? But there are a lot of barriers. So I think it's important that our Vincentians are willing to help with whatever barriers might be in the way.
That is such a good point. There's so many things, like sometimes it's just not as easy to pull yourself up by your bootstraps because you don't always have those bootstraps.
Yes.
And you need to do other things so you can actually have some bootstraps.
Yes. And sometimes we talk about mental health as a very important component of our total health and well-being as humans. And for the Vincentians to sit with someone and to offer them the dignity of listening to their story, of seeing who they are, they're judging the need, not the person. So that is such an important piece, and I think it really does sustain a more positive mental health attitude for people.
You are so right. There is power in when people feel heard.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
It is hard to serve people when they haven't been listened to about what they need.
Yes, well said.
No, that's great work being done there at St. Vincent's, and is appreciated by our community. Okay, well, Jody, we are on to what I think is probably the most important part of the show, and that is shout-outs.
All right. I love shout-outs.
All right. Let's go.
Okay. Well, we have great people in the community that are donating items to our store, that are sending in donations regularly to the organization, and we're using them in the best possible way that we can. We have great volunteers in our store. So I want to give a shout out to our volunteers in the store who come in every week. They are there, and they're there at like clockwork. I want to give a shout out to the St. Vincent de Paul staff. What a fantastic staff I have to work with. People who are passionate, who understand the why, and so they are passionate about the work that they do. And obviously the Vincentians, without whom there wouldn't be this amazing service in this community. So I want to shout out to all of the Vincentians out there. It can get overwhelming. We get a lot of requests coming in every day. And so some of our home visit teams some are going out 2 times a day or 3 times a day as volunteers to visit with people, to talk with them, to learn about them. So it's pretty incredible what they do.
Thank you. All right. At this time, Appleton Engaged listeners, we are going to start wrapping up this episode. So I just want to take a moment and say thank you for spending time with us, giving us your minds and ears, for being a community member that cares about another amazing resource in our community, making this a better place for our residents. We are a work in progress. We are trying to become the number one podcast in Northeast Wisconsin, but we can't do it without your help. So there's a few things we could use help with. That is this. If you have any questions that you think we should be asking our guests, or have any suggestions for our segments, please feel free to reach out to us. If you would like to be a guest, or if you would like to recommend a guest for Appleton Engaged here, you can reach us at diversity@appleton.org. Once again, that is diversity@appleton.org. Also, my request is, we think we have something pretty special here. We want to get in front of more eyes and ears of our community members so they can learn about all these amazing resources that we have here locally. But to do that, we need better analytics. So while you are listening to us, hit the subscribe button or hit a ratings button and give us 5-star rating. Don't give us 4, give us 5. Or if you've got a few more moments, take the time and actually fill out a review. These things improve our analytics, and it helps this podcast get in front of more eyes and ears. So we would appreciate that from you. Okay, so at this time, I am so glad that we got an opportunity to demystify St. Vincent's and to gain more understanding about how they originally came to be and all of the additional services that they do outside of the thrift store, because I'm not going to lie, I am one of those people that only knew about the thrift store. But now all of us Appleton Engaged listeners have learned a little bit more. So until next time, stay thoughtful, stay curious, and stay engaged.